I have cracked what I believe to be the code to closing speeches. It's essentially how do we end our speech to get the maximum impact? And now I don't want to brag, but I've used this framework, which I'll share with you in this video, to help me speak in front of crowds the size of 2,000 people, win public speaking competitions, and I know, receive a few standing ovations in the process. And this is powerful. This really does work, and it's quite simple. And hopefully you'll agree by the end of this video. So let's just jump right into things. There is a concept I want you to first familiarize yourself with, and that is, just make sure the mic is good. That is that the opening of your speech should focus on connecting to the audience. That's what the opening is. We just want to connect to these guys. And then what the closing is, the ending, that is all about what is the last thing we can say in order to have a lasting impact. Last thing for lasting. All right? The last thing we're saying, it's the last piece of information we can possibly give these guys in order to maximize our memorability. All right? Our impact, our full stop, which is they're going to remember. All right? That's essentially the goal here. And I have my laptop here with a few bullet points just to guide me. There's a few things we can do here. And now, as I go and label each one, maybe the first point doesn't align with you. That's okay, because there's other techniques and other things we can implement which might be more up your alley. So I'm saying that as a disclaimer for the first point, so that you don't click off right away, no matter how good it is. The first point, which you might not like, but let me first say it and then hear me out. The first point is poetry. Closing a speech off with a little poem that you wrote, a little something something, is a very, very effective tactic. And by poetry, I don't mean some William Shakespeare level writing or William Wordsworth or Emily Dickinson. It doesn't have to be some crazy philosophical, or masterpiece for that matter. It literally just has to be a little recap, a summary of what was said. It just has to be a little pleasing to the ear. Because think of it like this. Poetry is much like music, or music is much like poetry. Nature has tons of repetition, tons of rhythm, tons of patterns. And I mean, it's everywhere. Look at like when you cut a leaf cross section, the Fibonacci sequence in a snail, the scales on a fish. It's harmonious. There is repetition everywhere. Nature loves this rhythm, all right? And humans are no different. So when we go and speak, we kind of want to satisfy this rhythm. Does that make sense? And a poem does exactly that. When we have words that rhyme the way they should, when we have words that flow in terms of syllables, when there are concepts that are just laid out before us, like, I don't know, like oysters on a silver tray, it just makes sense. And it's very, very pleasing and soothing to the ear. So that's what we're trying to go for with poetry. So I use it as a way to summarize what was said in a speech, putting in a way that is beautiful to listen to, making it very digestible, making it a very digestible pill to swallow. And of course, the lights go off when I have to record. But that's okay. We're going by audio here. Listen to making a very digestible pill to swallow. You don't have to be a poet. Focus on. So this is how we write good poetry at the end of our speech. And what you want to remember is that this is merely a summary for the speech. All right. So what we need here, this is not going to be a poetry crash course. It's just going to say, this is what I do to close good speeches. All right. If you're a poet, if you're a writer, if you have a degree in this stuff, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend you, but I'm just keeping it simple here. What we want to do is we want to have a very simple A, B rhyme scheme. Okay? If you want to deviate from that and go A, B, that's okay, but I just found this is really, really simple. This one works really, really well. So follow an A, B rhyme scheme. So what that means is, it was a lovely day and I woke up to run. I didn't know what else to say, but I hope this video is still fun. Does that make sense? So that's the rhyme scheme we're going for. And then we obviously have to ensure that it rhymes. If your poem doesn't have rhyme, people won't really connect to it. It won't really sound like music. It's just not as enjoyable. All right. That's not to say, poems that don't rhyme aren't good, but hey, we're not Shakespeare here. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not, we just want to close a speech, Brody. So just add tons of antithesis and anaphora for poetic effect. Okay, that's a very good point. Antithesis plus anaphora. In our poem, if you don't know what antithesis is, look at the word anti, opposite, thesis, idea. So it's essentially hot versus cold, up versus down, light versus shadow. That's what antithesis is. So it was a rainy day, but I woke up with the sun inside. I went to school to learn where cancer cells reside. I don't know what that means, but that's, you get the idea. The sunny day, no, the rainy day, but it's sun inside. Okay, that's antithesis. Use that, sprinkle that somewhere in your poem if you can. That sound makes you sound like a real philosopher here. Anaphora is just repetition. So if we can have, I was writing a poem to conclude my valediction speech, valedictorian valediction, and I was saying, I'll miss the loss, I'll miss the quiet, I'll miss the bell, I'll miss the riot. I'll miss the na, I'll miss the na, I'll miss the blah blah, I'll miss the blah. Does that make sense? So I'll miss the, I'll miss the, I'll miss the, so I'm saying of the things I'll miss. That was one stanza, one paragraph in the poem. I'll miss the stories I'll never tell. I'll miss the na, I'll miss the blah blah, I'll miss the bell, I'll miss, you know what I mean? So that's an example of that. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the na, it was the blah blah blah. So we can use repetition and hot versus cold, up down, light versus shadow. There's contrast and ideas to really sprinkle it somewhere in our poem and make it delicious. And I have an example here. So I had a poem, a speech which I had to say on Valentine's Day, and it was pretty good. I had a nice story. The crowd liked it. It was connectable. People could listen to it and connect to it, relate to it. Relatable. That's the word I was looking for. It was funny. It was cute. It was whatever. It was good, and it really went well. But I didn't conclude it. I didn't finish the speech off with a poem. I ended it off with some other chiasms, which is another technique I will mention later in the video. But just now when I was writing some notes down for this video, in like 5 minutes, I wrote down a poem, an example of a poem, which would essentially be summarizing a bit of the story. So what the story was I woke up for Valentine's Day. I was going to ask this cute girl to be my Valentine. So I wake up and I feel like the man, I have this whole plan in my head, this cute teddy bear in my backpack. I'm going to ask her out, but it doesn't go to plan. She kind of rejects me before I can even ask her, so we're supposed to get ready for physical education. I take my shirt off to get dressed into my sports clothes. And she's like, Luca, you kind of fat, bro. And that kind of hurt my feelings. And so I was down for the whole day. I was like, man, stuff Valentine's Day. This sucks. And then I go home and I'm on the phone. I see my dad on FaceTime with my grandma. She was going through a rough patch. She lost her husband, her best friend, her cat Zorro, all in the span of like a week. She was really sad. And then I come to talk to her and I see how her face lights up and she's smiling and it's amazing again. And in that moment, I realize that is love. Love isn't this grand, elaborate, big firework that lights up the sky, some teddy bear. Love it's a verb. It's these little gestures we do. Love is this little candle that lights up your heart. Does that make sense? So to summarize that story, I say, I woke up one morning on Valentine's Day and went to school in search of love, but I couldn't think of the words to say and felt as though I wasn't enough. Okay, when I spoke to my granny on the phone, I saw her wrinkled face light up. That's how I learned to make love my own, from the smallest gesture, like saying, "What's up?" That's not perfect, that's not amazing, but that's kind of the idea we're going for here. So it's a simple A B rhyme scheme. Love doesn't really rhyme with enough, so maybe I would have refined that further. But for 5 minutes, it's not that bad, all right? It kind of encapsulates the entire story. If I said at the beginning of the speech and then at the end of the speech, I come back to this nice poem, the people can, it kind of like reignites that flame which we lit earlier on. They kind of remember the story again, making them, oh yeah, love, not enough. Oh yeah, love is actually small gesture like saying what's up. Yeah, thanks. So they kind of re-remember this thing, this story which we said earlier. So that's very effective. And that's the idea we want to go for here. I didn't have antithesis there, not much anaphora, but I had, the skeleton with a little bit of muscle on it. Then I could have maybe improved the rhymes. The AB rhyme scheme was there. I could have sprinkled this in a bit more, but you get the idea. It summarizes the story. It sounds kind of good. It doesn't have to be crazy. That's what I mean by poetry. So let's move on. It used it as a way of tying the speech together in a cool, rhythmic, almost pleasingly musical way. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. Okay. Let me clear this board and move on to the second point. And if you don't really resonate with poetry, that's okay. I've always been a little whippy woo woo about it, and I've kind of enjoyed writing some poems and stuff and appearing a bit more philosophical than I am or whatever. But if you're a bit more, I don't know, cooler than me, you probably want to do something else, and that's okay because I have techniques we can do here. But if you like poetry, then check the link in the description and we can write some poems for your speech together because it's free and I have the time on my hands now. So let's move on. If poetry isn't your style, we don't have to force it, okay? We don't have to force it into your speech, into your style. It's not for you, okay? And that's fine. We don't have to try it out. If it doesn't work, hey, leave it. Because the next point we have here is, let me write a quote actually. Remember this, Mr. Arrogant himself. Don't use other people's quotes. Oops. Quotes. Make your own quotable words. Mr. Arrogant, also known as Luca Bazooka. Oui, oui. Luca Bazooka. Booyah. Let me put a boom in brackets. Not that this is adding any value to the video, but hey, it makes me feel a bit better. So let's not use other people's quotes. Let's make up our own words which are quote worthy, quotable. And you might think, bro, I was going to use a Nelson Mandela quote. How do I compare to the Nelson Mandela? I was going to use a Winston Churchill quote. How does my writing, my words possibly compare to that? And listen here, Brody or sister. I don't know what you're achieving by just saying the same copy-paste quote people have heard before. All right? But if you say words which sound really, really good, that maybe aren't on the same level as Shakespeare or whoever we're going for here, Churchill, Mandela, Gandhi, any of their ghostwriters. That was a joke, even though it wasn't that funny. It was a bit shady, but whatever. Even though it might not be on that level, people can look at it and they can say, that was still pretty good. That is actually still kind of deep, coming from this random little kid in beat up sambas. Does that make sense? So we don't have to compete with these guys. No one has their speech. next to ours to compare line for line what we're saying. You know, the impact, the effect that we have with our own quotable words is far greater than just reciting another quote. So let's just get right into this. How do we make our own quote? How do I make a quote? Okay, we have to use something called Roman rhetoric. Roman rhetoric is a form of art, persuasive writing. I'm pretty sure it was made by the Romans or by the Greeks and perfected by whoever. So it's either the Romans made it and then perfected by the Greeks, or the Greeks made it and then the Romans sharpened it up, or something like that. But there's a bunch of people throughout history who've used it and who have been pretty persuasive and influential, and it's worked. Cicero is one of them, Caesar. It's in all modern day advertisements. Katy Perry uses it, Malcolm X uses it, JFK used it, I guess. You get the idea. This is everywhere, okay? Roman rhetoric. So what's the technique, the rhetorical device which we're going to be using to make our own quotes here? I've got to call this point 2. Our own quotes. Kind of like a DIY, do-it-yourself kit. That's cool, huh? Roman rhetoric. We're going to be using a technique called chiasmus. Chiasmus. What does that even mean, bro? I'll first give you an example and then I'll explain. So JFK, probably the best example there is, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That is an example of chiasmus. Ask not what your country can do for you, country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Okay, and let me please explain this in a biological sense. I've been waiting. So we have chromosomes, okay? And trust me, this is going to be a pretty cool example, I think. We have chromosomes for our DNA. And then chromosomes eventually end up overlapping, okay? In order to share DNA. It's like my mom's chromosome, my dad's chromosome. They touch, they share DNA, and they make whatever I am, okay? Me. Lol. And this point of contact where the chromosomes overlap and where they share DNA, that point there is called a chiasma. So I don't know what the Latin words and all that stuff means, but the word chiasmus relates to these chromosomes overlapping. Because we have a sentence like this: ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. We have this part, let's call that A and that B, and B is there and now A is there. They're very much just crisscrossing and overlapping, forming like a little X in the process. Let me give you another example. In the end, the true test is not in the speech a leader delivers, but whether the leader delivers on the speech. So we took the word speech and leader delivers, and then it becomes leader delivers and then speech. So in the end, the true test is not in the speech a leader delivers, but whether the leader delivers on the speech. Can you see this crisscross effect here? We've done it again. So essentially, we're taking part A of a sentence and B, and then we're going to flip the sentence so that it's B and then A. Don't climb life's mountains for the world to see you, but rather for you to see the world. I hope that makes sense. And chiasmus is a very, very powerful technique because, or very, very powerful when it comes to just putting things out there, making a quote, making a one-liner, making a realization or transformation at the end of our story. I use it for these simple sentences. I use it to end my speeches off with a bang, with a period that diffuses into the crowd, that lingers in the room, that lasts. I use it for my stories to formulate and just construct my realization in the best way I can. It's powerful. It works. So try it out, okay? Think of what you want to say. Did I think of an example as well? I didn't. Oopsies. But let me think of one now. Chiasmus. A speech on construction. Expanding Dubai. Okay, no. Construction in Dubai will better to build. No. Oh yeah. If we don't build until the sky, oh, we will bring construction. We will build. Fuck. We will bring buildings to the sky. Either we will build buildings to the sky, or we will bring the sky to buildings, or something like that. Okay, you get the idea. We will build and bring this buildings to the sky, or we will bring the sky to our buildings. I don't know what that means. I have no context for that. But that was somewhat like chiasmus, and that was a very terrible example. Rather focus on JFK, rather focus on this Pinterest or Hillary Clinton quote, I'm pretty sure, and focus on the Pinterest example I gave you. But you get the idea. Your own quote. Use that instead of just copy pasting someone else's. It's a lot more personable. People like the effort, and it makes you sound a lot better now that you know actually how to make it your own, how to add chiasmus, which is a very powerful technique, to your words, baby. So let me quickly spray this, clean it up, and let's move on and add some more sauce to the video. So, what was I gonna say, guys? I don't know. It is usually in my videos I'm wearing a white t-shirt or a white piece of clothing, but now I'm wearing a green little sweater which my mommy got for me, which I quite like for that matter. So if you're gonna say something mean about it, you're gonna go through my mama. But jokes aside, I don't know why I'm switching it up today, but I am. And this is an exercise, man. It's an arm workout. Now it's a concert. Ayo. Okay. The wall's clean. Let's go. Point 3. Now that I told you about a chiasmus, that was a rhetorical device, which is powerful. But he's got homies, he's got friends, he's got brothers. That there was a rhetorical device. So point 3 is going to be Roman rhetoric. If we can just add Roman rhetoric to our conclusions, we make big fires, bro. Fires that light up the world, the sea, space. You know, we make big fires with Roman rhetoric. This is mad fuel, okay? So there's a few devices we can use here. I think I'm first going to give you an example. You're going to be like, whoa, that's pretty good. And then I'll deconstruct the example into the rhetorical devices I used, and then I'll explain the rhetorical devices so you can understand them better. So let's say I had to close off a speech for, I don't know, some kind of med school vibe, why you want to be a doctor, you know, what's your passion, something like that. I'll write it out here. In the end, what matters most is that you love what you do. Is that you love what you do. What matters most is that you do not judge the man who stumbles with bare feet. Judge the man that stumbles with bare feet while you stand wearing sandals. How do you spell sandals? Hope it's like that. Sandals. But above all, what matters most is that you ask not what your patient can do for your pocket. What your patient can do for your pocket. But what your pocket can do for your patient. Can do for your patient. In the end, what matters most is that you love what you do. What matters most is that you do not judge the man that stumbles with bare feet while you stand wearing sandals. But above all, what matters most is that you ask not what your patient can do for your pocket, but what your pocket can do for your patient. All right, there's a few devices I've added here. The one we can see most clearly is, of course, here at the end, we have a lovely little chiasmus, right? We just talked about it. Ask not what your patient can do for your pocket. Ask what your pocket can do for your patient. So you won't really see the crisscross here because the way I wrote it is a bit wonky, but you get the idea. That is quite clearly chiasmus. Is this a powerful example? No, I also wrote it in like a minute or two, but I just really wanted to combine all the different devices so you kind of get the idea of things here. So that there is chiasmus. Then, if we look here, in the end, what matters most, but above all, what matters most, that repetition of what matters most 3 times. Repetition like that is called anaphora. And don't worry, I'll explain what all of these things are. Anaphora. And then we look to, you see how I listed 3 things here? In the end, what matters most is that you love what you do. So I list one thing, I list one point, and then I say another thing. What matters most is that you do not judge the man who stumbles with bare feet while you stand wearing sandals. There's a second point. And then I list a third thing here, using the phrase, but above all. So I've kind of listed 3 things, and each time, the degree in which I label them, or the things in which I list, it increases. So first it's point 1, and then point 2, and then point 3. It's essentially going from good to better to best. And that right there, that is called climax. So I listed 3 things, climax in brackets, groups of 3. When you list things in groups of 3, they're just far more trifecta, triadon, the proton, the proton, the electron, the neutron, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the Father, the Mother, the Child, the earth, the sky, and the water. You know, land, sky, land, earth, water. You know, it's everywhere. Groups of three are everywhere. So we're just going to satisfy this need, which stems from nature, and we're going to add it into our speeches. Okay. I hope I'm standing in frame here as well. Let me just double check I'm in frame. Oh, we're easy peasy in frame. And then another point I had was, oh yeah, if you look here, do not judge the man that stumbles with bare feet while you stand wearing sandals. This here, what in the world is this bracket? That there is called an antithesis. Contrasting ideas, right? Hot, cold, up, down, yes, no. Stumble, stand, bare feet, sandals. So, anaphora, I mentioned, it's repetition. In the end, what matters most, but above all, what matters most. So we want to repeat the phrase where we can. Then I move over into something called a climax. We want to keep that in groups of three. List the first point, then list the second point, which is slightly longer, but longer, not necessarily, but more so stronger. And the third point, we want to save our best point, the best thing we have, our biggest bullet for the end. That's the best point. So this kind of sets him up, and then this one sets him up. But everything we said before puts emphasis on that. And we want to use this phrase here, but above all. So, Luca, when you record YouTube videos, you want to be yourself, you want to be authentic, but above all, you want to bring energy. Okay, so it kind of just highlights and adds emphasis to this third and final point here. So use that phrase there, but above all. Very powerful. And then we have antithesis. Very, very strong. We can use it in poetry. We can use it when explaining things. We can use it in songs like Katy Perry, because you're hot, then you're cold, you're yes, then you're no, you're in, then you're out, you're up, then you're, you know what I mean? So it's really powerful. Use antithesis where you can. The man, what matters most is that you do not judge the man that stumbles with bare feet while you stand wearing sandals. How's that for poetry, bro? But above all, what matters most is that you ask not what your patient can do for your pocket, but what your pocket can do for your patient. That is chiasmus. Textbook example of chiasmus. A, B, we have the A, we have the B, and then we just flip the sentence until it's B and A. So, ask not what your patient can do for your pocket, ask what your pocket can do for your patient. I hope you see that, I hope you understand that, and I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not rushing through this, am I? I wish you were here in person so it could be like, oh, do you understand that? What about this? But that's what we have the comment section for and the link in description if you have any personal questions, which I can give you personalized answers for. Check it out if you want. It's all free, don't worry. Let's erase this. Do I even have another point? Oh yeah. Oh, but we can erase it. The final point which I want to mention in the video, I'll just talk on now, just to save time. We want to use AI. This is our fourth point, AI. And AI is a touchy subject because everyone hates AI, right? It's no, don't use it, bro, because it's going to destroy your speech. It's going to make it concrete. It's like architecture, right? No one likes this new modern day stuff because it's a bit too futuristic-y and cold and emotionless. And it's like, whoa, bro, I feel like I'm in, on a Mars colony right now. I don't feel like I'm at home on Earth. So we don't want to go too far with the AI stuff, okay? With this futuristic design. We still want to keep it human. But what I'm talking about is where people make the mistake with AI is they use it to replace them, which is a big no-no. But we want to use AI to replace our coach. But we don't have a coach. We don't have a tutor. We don't have a mentor for public speaking. So AI is just going to become our mentor, our refiner. He's going to become our sharpener. AI is a sharpener and we're the pencil, okay? So I have a few notes here. these are some prompts or examples I've used, how I use AI. So I use AI to go deeper into a topic, to refine it, to sharpen it, to make it better. But I don't say, yo, here's this speech, or here, here's this topic I have, write a speech for it. I don't say, yo, here's a speech I wrote, give me a poem, and I copy paste the poem. It doesn't work like that. So here's how I use it. Here's the speech I wrote. I'm going to write a poem to summarize it. What would you say are the key aspects to focus on in each line or stanza? So it would be, with your story, it's very important that you show the before and the after, which highlights the transformation. So a few lines or one paragraph in the poem can focus on the cute little Luca who wants love and who wants this girl and whatever. And the other one can focus on the outcome. So the transformation, what you learn love to actually be. How did you learn love to be like that? What did you find love to be? What does it mean to you, etc. So it's the before in the story and the after, which ultimately highlights the transformation in the story. And it can be, oh, that point you mentioned on love. Then from that realization, I talk about love a bit more. Love is actually this gesture. There's a hair in my mouth. Love is actually, the actions we do and the gestures. So that can be another point. Does that make sense? So each little part throughout the speech there's a few key aspects in your speech. AI can help you identify them, all right? But we're not saying, yo, here's this speech I made, make me a poem on it, okay? I'm trying to make my own quotable words to end my speech. How would you refine this? How would you make the Roman rhetoric stronger? How would you improve the rhythm in the poem here? So things like that. Here's what I tried. How would you make it better? Here's what I've got so far. How would you reinforce it, refine it? How would you make this rhythm better? How would you remove this syllable? Could I replace this word for another one that rhymes? I feel like the impact here can be stronger. Would you rather use this red word or like velvet red? Because it adds a syllable, but it's this and that. So you wanted to ask questions like that. And you have a very strong advantage here because you now know what Roman rhetoric is. So you can simply say, yo. So it just increases the output you can have because you can tweak the input now and dive deeper. So you've refined the input. Now your output is going to be magnified 10x. So, hey, how would you reinforce this image, reinforce this transformation in my poem using Roman rhetoric? Does that make sense? So little things like that now. How could you conclude this speech of mine? Give me different parts I can take. So you can take the ideas into consideration and see if you like anything. Can you add any of your own poetry, your own quotable words or rhetoric to it? So for me, sometimes I'd be like, yo, here's a story. What kind of lesson do you think is strongest here? This is some ideas I have. Do you have any of your own? We talk about it. I refine it. No, I don't like yours here. I'd rather take mine and move in this direction. But are there any other ways we can go about that? Things along the lines of that. This video is done. I hope it was useful to you. I hope you got some value from it. I hope the AI stuff makes a bit of sense. I hope the rhetoric makes some sense here. The quotable lines, the poetry. I hope this was good. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. And I want you to understand, in order to get better at this stuff, theory's cool and all, this YouTube video is cool. I know I'm cool, but you really need practice. You need to be practical with your learning here. We actually have to go and implement this now. So if you can remember one thing from this video, one note you might have made, go and take one thing, one rhetorical device like chiasmus, and we're just going to go and implement that the next time we speak. We're just going to use the chiasmus to try and make our own quote. Nothing crazy. We're not going to take everything at once, going add it to our speech, because we don't really gain from that. Think of it like I had a habit where I would bite the skin on the side of my nails. In order to fix that and to stop that, I would just say, instead of saying, okay, I'm not going to, like pull off the skin on all my fingers now, I'm only going to focus on one finger. So I'll just say, okay, I'm not going to mess with this index finger. And I'll go mess around with all the other fingers, pull off the skin and stuff. Like, I mean, it's not as gross as biting your nails, but it's still like you're pulling off the dry skin, and sometimes you pull too much, and it's painful, it sucks. So one finger at a time, and before you know it, I have a whole hand that's free. And I just focus on the thumb, one finger. and then I'll go and again, and I add another finger, and it adds up to this whole hand. So what we want to do is just take one point, one antithesis example, one chiasmus, one anaphora, add that, focus on that, and make sure you get it, and then move on to the next finger and keep that process going until eventually it adds up to an entire speech, an entire hand, and you ultimately become a complete speaker. So I've already stretched this video on for far too long, like mozzarella cheese, but take care, and I hope to see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.